Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah. Thank you so much for watching. Today I wanted to talk about what I have learned and my advice for long distance relationships, and like more specifically military ones. So if you've been following along, then you know my fiance is in the Marines. He has been gone since February, so by the time he comes back home it'll be about 9 months. So stay tuned for Friday's video because I'm going to go into more detail about that and when he's coming home and all that kind of stuff. So I'm super excited. So today I just wanted to really talk about like what I've learned and the challenges that I've faced and that sort of thing with being in a long distance relationship. So I'll talk about the takeaways that I've had more. I think going into it, like for me personally, I knew like Daniel's coming back home. He's not going active, so he's not gonna be like leaving me when he comes back home. Like obviously that's a possibility, but he should just be coming back home. So in my mind, I was always telling myself like it could be worse, and that can be a good mindset and a bad mindset. Like there's pros and cons to it, so I wanted to just talk about that for a little bit. So the good, there's definitely like a lot of positives about thinking that way. And so like for example, if you're thinking like, well, it could be worse, then you're not gonna be like just complaining all the time and whiny, and because you know that other people, obviously there's always gonna be someone whose situation is harder than yours. So if you're thinking constantly like, oh, it could be worse, like yeah, it could be worse, so that makes you more thankful for the situation that you're in that much more. But when you're also in that mindset, like sometimes you, at least like for me, I didn't really always let myself feel sad all the time. Like if you have an emotion, like if you're sad or upset just because like you miss your boyfriend, like that's normal and that's totally fine. You can be sad. It doesn't mean that you need to validate the fact that what you're going through is hard, but you don't need to let that control everything, if that makes sense. So as much as sometimes you might be tempted to fixate on the fact of like what you don't have, you should also be thinking about like what you do have. So I think that mindset can be helpful and hurtful at the same time, but more so positively, because if you're always thinking it could be worse, then you're gonna kind of push yourself to look at the better things and focus on the good and not focus so much on the bad. So I definitely think that can be a really helpful thing, but that also kind of ties in with my next point, and that's comparing relationships. So I think like one thing that I've learned, and then this really goes hand in hand with like it could be worse, like you don't need to compare your relationship to someone else's. So whether that is another military relationship or even a civilian relationship, you just don't need to compare. You don't need to compare the two, because there are people that go through long distance relationships that aren't in the military, and like that's just as hard. Like distance is hard no matter what the reason for it is. So if you are in a long distance relationship, then you should not be comparing your relationship to your friend's relationship, to the people that you see on YouTube and Facebook. Like you should not be comparing your relationship. Just your relationship is your relationship. And the more that you compare it and try to focus on either what you don't have or focusing on like how much better you think you are than someone else, those are both not the best mentalities to have. So I advise you to stay away from getting into that pattern and habit of thinking that way. The two biggest things that have been the hardest for me are, one, the emotional disconnect I have felt, and like a lot of that is distance. Like if you think about it, if you're used to being around someone every day, seeing them every day and that kind of thing, and you kind of have your patterns, like obviously Daniel and I, we don't live together, but so whenever I would go over to his house, like we would hang out, whenever we hang out, we would have, you know, you just have like your routine. You're used to seeing each other, you're used to being able to take care of each other, be able to talk whenever you want. And so when you spend more time with someone, you become closer to them. And so when you're further apart and you're not able to spend time together, and like for Daniel, like he can't even control his time a lot, then it makes it harder sometimes. Like you have to work that much harder to be able to put time into your relationship. And so feeling like that emotional side of it has been the hardest thing for me. Other people might have their opinions, but girls, like, we are more emotionally, like, guys are more physical connection, women are more emotional. And so, like, when we're far apart, both of those things are strained. Like, for the guys, the physical side, obviously you're hundreds of miles apart, thousands of miles apart, you're not near each other. But the emotional side, like, when you are in a place with other people, you can't exactly have a lot of privacy, and so it makes it harder to have conversations. And another struggle for us has been, like, at my house, our service stinks, and sometimes the Wi-Fi isn't that great either, and that can make the, like, FaceTime calls just frustrating because it's either freezing or reconnecting, and it's just, like, really hard because, or not really hard, it's really annoying because all you want to do is talk to each other. You have to wait all day till you both have time, and then it doesn't work, and it's like, it's so frustrating because there's not really anything either of you can do about it, but it's affecting both of you, and you're both frustrated about it and wish you could fix it. If you've been through the FaceTime connection struggles, you understand. Another big challenge for me has been not having someone who, like, really understands what I'm going through. Like, I feel like I haven't had other people close by me that I know have gone through having their boyfriend or fiance or husband be gone, like, whether it's for, like, mostly, like, military. I just feel like I haven't had a lot of people that I've been able to ask questions or get advice from that I could, like, that they understood what I was going through and actually knew something that would be helpful. Like, I can still get advice from, like, my parents and stuff, and even, like, my pastor, and it's still helpful, but it's not always exactly the same. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's been a challenge for me. I wish that I had someone who could relate more, like, in the same way to what I went through, or, like, what I've been going through. The best advice that I would have to give after going through this the better portion of this year, honestly, the biggest thing I would advise you to do is have friends. And I've said that a bunch of times before, but it makes a huge difference being able to have people to talk to. Even if they can't relate or understand, they can still sympathize and encourage you and support you. And also, you can just hang out with friends, and you should be doing that. We weren't created to live life alone. So regardless of what phase of life you're going through, it is really important to not be alone. But especially if someone that you love and care about, and, like, your best friend, if they're going away for long periods of time, you need to have other friends, other people that you trust and you can talk to and just hang out with. The biggest part, I think, I would argue that one of the biggest aspects of a relationship is communication. So while your relationship is going through distance, communication is still just as important, but it can be a lot harder to communicate. And Daniel and I would both tell you, like, communicating through phones, like, only through your phone, it's not fun. But I also don't believe that it's natural, it's not normal, and it's definitely not the way that God intended relationships to be. It's amazing what we can do with technology, but it's not anywhere near what it's like having a face-to-face relationship with someone. As beneficial as technology can be, it can also be really frustrating because you don't always want to just be glued to your phone and have to rely on that to communicate to, like, to your fiance, to your boyfriend, to your girlfriend, to your husband, whoever. You want to just be able to talk to them. So that can be really annoying, but communication is really important. So if something is going on and it's upsetting you, like, you need to talk about it, because especially if there's 100 miles between you, like, first of all, guys can't read minds, neither can girls, but guys especially cannot read your mind. If you're upset about something and you're 100 miles away, like, you need to say what you're feeling, how you're thinking, and share it with him, and you just kind of need to talk it out. That'll be the best way to resolve any conflict or tension that you feel between you guys. Like, you need to just talk about it and figure out, like, why are you upset? What can you do differently? And that sort of thing. As much as you can, I would advise you to take time to give to each other. Like, set aside a certain time that you know you'll be able to talk. Sometimes that's just out of your control, so you just have to make do with what you have, and that can be kind of frustrating sometimes. Like, you just want to talk and sometimes you can't, but like, that happens in real life. Like, this is real life, but that happens in non long distance relationships too. So that's just something to think about. My other advice is to be patient with each other, extend grace to each other even when you don't feel like it, and be considerate of one another, because you need to be sensitive to what he's going through as much as he needs to be sensitive to how you feel. So like, for me, it's frustrating. Like, I can't fully understand what Daniel's going through, and so when he's had a rough day, like, I can't really do anything about it because it's just out of my control. So as much as you can, just be willing to give each other space when you need it, but just be sensitive to how they're feeling and how you're feeling. So basically, long distance is not really fun. I mean, it's doable, it's not impossible. It is not for everyone, it is not for the faint of heart, but it is challenging, and it's something that you have to get through together, and it's a growing process. It takes a lot of work, and it's not going to be perfect, and it's not always going to be fun, and sometimes it's going to be messy and just frustrating because you just want to be back together and that kind of thing. The best way to go about things is just take life one day at a time. Get through today, and then get through tomorrow, and then get through the next day, and eventually time moves on, and you're learning and growing and figuring out how to know each other even when you're apart. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, let me know down below if you learned something different through long distance, or if you have any other advice. Please comment down below, share with others. That would be awesome. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and you like videos like this, and remember to stick around for Friday's video. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day. Bye.